What happens when the world gets turned on its head? We're forced to look inward, perhaps become fearful, sometimes lash out at others. While there are others in the world who don't give up hope because they believe in people. Join me, Kevin Tibbles, and Amy Goldberg for our new podcast, Believe in People, where we meet those who don't give up hope.
Today's guest on Believe in People is somebody a lot of you have something in common with. After all, stress, kids, broken marriages, and breakdowns have all become a part of our daily life.
But Stacey Powells has confronted all of those challenges, survived them, and more. And now she helps others by writing about the hope that keeps her going.
And with October being Mental Health Month, we've decided it's the perfect time to sit down with her. Stacey, welcome to Believe in People.
Thank you so much.
You've confronted the challenges of stress, kids, broken marriage, breakdown, and survived all of them. Now you help others by writing about what keeps you going. So first off, thank you for feeling comfortable enough to speak with us. And would you kindly share your story and what led you to your breakdown?
Oh, well, what led me to the breakdown? So many things. Yeah, I'm an A-type personality person, always had it together, never, ever thought I would fall apart. In May of 84, I married an actor. And 4 months later, he broke his leg and the hospital put a cast on his leg that burned the back of his leg, 3rd-degree burns. I'm giving you a very short version of this. 13, 14 surgeries later, took a couple of years. He lost his acting career. We got pregnant in between surgeries and had 2 boys. The entire marriage was stress because of the leg injury. I was also working full-time at Paramount Pictures in the music department, trying to juggle that while raising 2 boys. I was very grateful that the boys eventually got into the daycare center at Paramount Pictures, so I was able to take them to work with me. But my ex-husband's alcoholism and addiction got worse, and I eventually had enough of everything. And before that, in 1992, Paramount Pictures let me move to Mammoth Lakes, California, and keep my job, which was licensing music for various television shows. And it was phone, fax, computer back then. And so I was able to do my job from a different location. I was a telecommuter. I was am a bad asthmatic and could not stand living in Los Angeles anymore. So we moved everybody up to Mammoth Lakes. And it just, one thing after another, the divorce happened. Very acrimonious divorce. Of course, I was blamed for everything because everything was my fault. I moved the kids back down to Santa Clarita, which is in North LA County. And I thought it was the best thing to do to keep the kids close to their dad because he'd moved back to Los Angeles. And it turned out to be the worst thing I could have possibly done. My ex still blamed me for everything. Paramount, my boss at Paramount Pictures, who I adore, Ridge Walker, finally retired after 50-something years of working at Paramount Pictures. And I was under the television division at Paramount Pictures. And the manager there was not somebody I got along with for a lot of reasons. And they forced me to come into the office, wouldn't let me telecommute anymore. My kids started getting into trouble. And one thing led to another. And Paramount said if I didn't come into the office, they would let me go. So they let me go. And it just, everything that I had been dealing with the last 15 years, trying to hold it together, just all crumbled. And the plate started breaking fast and furious. And my brain just stopped functioning.
Can I ask you, do you think your story is unique in today's world?
No. And the reason I wrote my book, Empty Cupboards, was because it's 31 stories of events that happened in my life that led up to this brain break. It wasn't just one event. I believe it was a series of events. I believe what the hospital did to my husband's leg and everything that happened post broken leg and after divorce was the icing on the cake. I believe everybody has survived something. All of us have survived something, and we all have stories we can tell. And I don't believe it was just one event. I believe it was a culmination of a bunch of events, which led to my serious nervous breakdown, which I was embarrassed about. This wasn't supposed to happen to me.
And yet, and Stacey, and not only that, but then you have to stay strong because there's a whole stigma based on that. And I'm so happy we're talking about this because this is Mental Health Month in October. Yeah. And so, and part of that is that blame game, isn't it? I mean, how do you even go there? How did you manage that?
Oh, I didn't talk about it so what had happened was eventually, Paramount let me go. I remember dropping my kids off at school and grabbing a cream cheese muffin in the bakery on the way because I had gained a whole bunch of weight during that time, and coming home and sitting on my stairs, and the depression, and it was unfamiliar to me because I wasn't holding it together, was so bad. I couldn't focus on writing. I couldn't focus on licensing music for anything, that I remember thinking to myself that if there was a gun in the house, somebody else was going to have to pick up my kids from school that day. And that really got me. So I called my mom and I said, I need help. I need help. And so she came over and, make a long story short, sorted through my bills, helped me find a psychiatrist, sort of helped with the boys, but not really helped with the boys. My boys started to get really out of control at that time. But I got put on a couple of antidepressants at that time, which leveled my head off. But I didn't talk about what was going on with me so much to a lot of people, a lot of my friends. Some of my friends knew, but a lot of people didn't because I was ashamed about the fact that I couldn't hold it together and I couldn't keep it together. And as a society, when a situation happens that's so insane and we are expected to hold it together, when this roller coaster of events happened with my husband's leg being burned, and there was a lawsuit, by the way, because of that, because you don't go into a hospital with a broken leg and come out with third-degree burns. So there was a big lawsuit. That's intense. Society thinks that we are supposed to hold it together when insane events happen, and we can't. We need to have a safe space where it's okay for us to say, look, this is happening in my life. I need help. I cannot hold it together anymore. Please, what do I do?
So society expects us to hold us together when the wheels are coming off. And yet, at the same time, our way of dealing with that is basically to isolate ourselves, if I'm understanding what you're saying. I'm assuming now you're saying that's absolutely the wrong way to go, and thank goodness at least you had your mother to call. What should the rest of us be doing?
Therapy in the past has been seen as an exercise in resignation. Like, I'm resigned to do therapy because it's the only way I can climb out of my mental, my mental hole here. Asking for help is the best way to do it. Talk to your friends. I am so blessed to have a close circle of girlfriends. Unfortunately, at that time, my siblings were of no help to me at all. They, I don't know how many of you have siblings out there, but they can sit in judgment. And the sibling relationship is a whole different episode. But they didn't really help, but my girlfriends were there for me. I had a great therapist, and the Celexa and the Wellbutrin that I was on kept me level. And so for 18 months, I had a bad day for 18 months. And that's why I was on those drugs. And then one day I woke up literally feeling like myself. And I said to my psychiatrist, I said, okay, I need to go off these drugs. I feel good now. And of course he said, no, you don't just go off the drugs. You got to do it slowly, so your brain doesn't zap. And the brain does zap when you all of a sudden go off those drugs. And for me, what happened
is zap,
was,
by the way?
Like an electric impulse in the brain. It just goes zzz. It's a brain zap. I mean, it's like we're all electricity.
Really?
We are electric. Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's really wild. it's really a wild thing because, as you know, if somebody has a heart attack, they electrify the heart so we can get back going. So we're all electric. And so however those drugs work, if you go off of Celexa, Wellbutrin, and whatever antidepressants you're on, like just stop taking them cold turkey, your brain will start zapping. And that's not good because some horrible things can happen. So I'm not a neurologist, so I don't know.
And then you think, and then Stacey, then you think you're, when people feel that they're in a good place, that is, I have experienced through friends, when two people go off too quickly because they feel strong enough, that's probably like the worst time is to say, I'm going to resign myself to the fact that I'm going to take these because they're going to help me. But in addition to that, you started writing, or did that come about? Have you always been a writer? When was that part of your therapy?
I've always been a writer. My mother said the reason I was 3 weeks late is because I was trying to finish writing a book. So I've always been a writer. I got sidetracked with a lot of things and would start projects, and then I would get married, and then start projects, and then the kids, and then with the ex-husband's leg injury, I did start writing a book during that time, which I actually only finished 2 years ago, which is called Anything for Love. It'll be loosely based on that whole thing. But these stories in Empty Cupboards started during my breakdown, because for me as a writer, at my worst possible moment, there's a little voice in my head that says, I know this is going to, if I survive this is going to make a story someday. I didn't know how it was going to turn out. I didn't know it was going to be this book of 31 essays. But I was writing in the middle of this breakdown. I didn't finish the whole book until about a year ago.
So is writing part of your therapy?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Writing and playing pickleball and walking in the woods and traveling with
us too.
Yeah, you play pickleball?
Stacey, we just started. Both Kevin and I picked it up on the exact same day, and we were in different provinces. I mean, is that not crazy?
I didn't know it was therapy.
But hitting something is always therapy. So hitting a little ball, that makes that noise when it hits it. And I travel a lot with my second and final husband. We love traveling the world, and we belong to homeexchange.com. So we exchange homes with people all over the world. So that's all therapy for me, as long as there's Wi-Fi, because I still work. I write. And I'm also still in the music business I do music cue sheets for some production companies as well to support my writing career.
So you're doing all these things, which means you're very active, which means you're not sitting alone in your house on the steps, contemplating the worst of all decisions. So let me ask you this then. What is normal?
For who? For me?
For you, I guess.
This is my new normal. I was telling my husband, I said, because right after the divorce, my older son started getting into trouble, and I had to send him away to a lockdown boarding school on Christmas at 3 a.m. Those stories you hear about those places for teenagers who are troubled. It was a place in Montana, and I'm going to say Spring Creek Lodge. It's no longer there because of all the lawsuits. It was not the best place, but I did send him there. And so it went from this chaotic marriage to my older son getting in trouble with all sorts of things, sending him away, then moving back to Mammoth. And then I met in 2007, I had started walking with who is now my husband, Dan. And we just kind of slowly fell in love. And he has been a great support for me through everything. And my new normal is to grant me the serenity for the things I cannot change, and the courage to accept the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, whatever that serenity prayer is. And taking care of myself, because I cannot control anybody. I cannot control anything that happens in the world. And for somebody who's a bit of a control freak, that was a big lesson for me to learn. Because of the stress of everything that I've been under, not only did I break down, but I also got kidney cancer in 2008 and lost my left kidney. The kidney is one of the organs that is very joined with stress in your life. And, the adrenal gland sits right on top of it. So I lost a kidney and an adrenal gland. The kidney I have left is in stage 3 kidney failure. So I have to every day be on a mission to be calm and realize that things happen around me, not necessarily to me. And I can't fix everything. I cannot be a helicopter mom anymore. What happens to my boys, they're 34 and 35, is their own journey. They have their own soul contract. I can only deal with mine.
And actually, so to that point, Stacey, then how did the kids at the time when they were younger, I imagine, how did they handle things? Did they know what you were going through?
I don't think to the extent that, we've talked about it a little bit. My older son now, who unfortunately made some really horrendous choices, is now a ward of the state of Montana. And he's got 3 meals a day and a roof over his head. But he has been sober for 4 years now. And he has talked to me about what he saw and what he knows I went through, especially being married to their dad. The younger one, he's my beautiful LGBTQ son and is a makeup artist, but is also having to deal with the fallout of stuff that happened when he was younger. His father never accepted him as gay, and his brother gave him a really hard time. So he has not talked to his father in years. He has not talked to his brother in years. And so he is having to deal with a lot of issues which come up based on what happened in his childhood. And I still feel guilty and wish I was more present for them. But when I fell apart, I wasn't there for them. And that is always going to be one huge regret in my life. I don't recommend having a nervous breakdown when raising 2 teenage boys by yourself.
Well, when we talked a little earlier about how people isolate themselves when they're in dire straits like that, I'm assuming through isolation comes internalization. And you take all that stress and you internalize it because you're trying to hang on. You're hanging like those old posters of that cat. Remember that used to say hang in there, baby, or whatever in the dentist's office?
Exactly.
So you're trying to hang on. But what you've just described for me too is that you're going to pay a physical price if you internalize all that jazz. So let's talk a bit about the book then. In the book, you take this journey, you describe this journey, and what can we take away from your journey?
To not internalize, number one. I come from, we are all products of our upbringing and our environment. And another book I'm writing, which is about what happened to my older son and why he turned out the way he did, is called, I'm calling it The Inch Between Us, because the first time I saw him in jail, there was an inch of glass between us with the hands going up, that whole thing. And I'm learning a lot about epigenetics, and which is part of our DNA that scientists are just learning about. They thought there's lots of DNA, like our hair color, our eye color, our mannerisms that are the same as our parents. But there's these strands of DNA that have to do with the traumas that are passed down to us from our family. And my family, it was very good at sweeping things under the cover. We didn't talk about feelings. We didn't talk about money. We didn't talk about anything. It was all very superficial. And my father was a Beverly Hills pharmacist, the Beverly Hills pharmacist. And he had a whole separate life outside of his family. And he always looked like he wanted to be somewhere else than with us. And so taking all this into consideration, he was a workaholic. I'm a workaholic. The only other conversation I ever had with my dad, I remember, because he just didn't talk, was I was working in the pharmacy with him one day, and we were driving up the 405 going home. And he turned to me, and all he said was, I was about 15. He turned to me and said, "Don't get pregnant." And that was the extent of the conversation that I had with him. And, I think in families, it's so important that everybody talk about what might have happened historically, because I didn't know until a couple of years ago that my grandmother was institutionalized twice for 2 nervous breakdowns. I didn't know until a couple of years ago that my great-grandfather on my mom's side was extremely violent, a very violent man who died violently in a mental institution. It would have been really nice to know these things. As far as my dad's side of the family, they didn't talk about anything. They just kept things very close to the vest. And that does not serve anybody. I think the families need to open up and come together and talk about the possibility of what could be going on in the families mentally, so we're prepared in case something does happen, and so we feel safe that we can go to our parents or our kids or our grandparents or whoever and say, hey, this is happening with me. How do I handle it? How do I get help? What do I do? Fortunately, now there's like websites. I think it's called betterhelp.com or something like that, where you can call and get assigned to a therapist for very little money. There's commercials all over the place talking about mental health. It's all over the internet talking about mental health. But it shouldn't be trendy. It should be something taken very, very seriously. And there are so many people with anxiety right now. I mean, I grew up in the 70s. I went to high school in the 70s. I do not remember any of my friends with this anxiety and on pills and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, what the heck? And the only thing I can attribute it to, and this is just my personal opinion, is social media and the internet. Too much information all at once.
Yeah, that's so true, Stacey. So then how did you turn things around for yourself? Because I mean, this is fascinating. Your turnaround, you actually marry people now, don't you?
I do. I'm a wedding officiant. I actually have I am. I had a wedding yesterday, and I've got a rehearsal today and a wedding tomorrow. The next couple of weeks is wedding rehearsal. So
that's incredibly optimistic of you.
It's a great, first of all, it's a fun way to make a little money. It's a happy occasion. For me, it's easy because I was on the radio for many years. So talking in front of people is no big deal, as you can probably tell. So I do marry people. That's one of my side gigs. I just love it because, who's not going to love? I never say in the wedding, if anybody here doesn't think these two should be married, forever, speak now, forever hold your peace. I never say that in ceremonies because if people at the ceremony don't think that those people up there shouldn't get married, then those people shouldn't be at the ceremony. So it's just a really happy occasion. And I live in a gorgeous area, a stunning area in the Sierra Nevada. And I just feel very grateful that I can make somebody husband and wife or man and husband, whatever, here in the Sierra Nevada.
Does it give you hope to see that happening?
What gave me hope was marrying my second husband. We got married. I always said to myself, if I ever wanted to get married again, I want it to be on the beach in the mountains. And June Lake Beach is where we got married. And it gave me hope that I found somebody to love me for who I am and for all my weirdness. We've both been in menopause since we've been married. I say both because it's not just the wife who goes through it, the husband goes through it as well. And so it gave me hope that I found somebody to love me upside down and backwards, knowing how quirky I am and that I'm a workaholic and that I have this family with baggage. So I always believe, it's finding that one person you can tolerate the rest of your life.
That's so true. And so with Stacey, then you had hope. I mean, you really did. The fact that you trusted somebody else to share your life with, that's pretty remarkable given everything that's gone on.
Yeah, absolutely. I met him right when I was going through my cancer thing, and he helped me heal, actually. He took care of me. Before that, I broke my knee at the radio station. I tripped over my dog that was at the radio station, and he took care of me. Every day I'd come home and he'd come to his house and he'd have a pack of frozen peas to put on my knee. And so if he could put up with, my kids, boys were very protective of me. They didn't, they weren't necessarily nice to him in the beginning. Let's just put it that way. And that's a reflection on them, not on him. And so he took care of my broken knee. He took care of me after cancer. And then, we got married. And so, I got lucky the second time around. Definitely.
I don't want to sort of, play the devil's advocate, but that's your normal, what you have just described for us during this conversation today. But I bet there are a lot of people out there whose normal probably isn't that dissimilar to yours, in that there are probably a lot of people out there just hanging on, as we discussed earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you're very lucky you found someone to perhaps show you the pathway out.
Yeah. There's a Carole King song, and I don't want to do the lyrics now. It's called Natural Woman. If I do the lyrics, you guys might have to license them. And I'm
Love
a
that
licensing
song
person, so I'm not going to do that. So look at the lyrics there. Something about her soul kind of sort of being in the lost and found. There's a lyric there that says that. And he definitely found me when that was there, when I was just kind of coming out of my chaotic brain moment, and just loved me for all my quirks, as I love him for all his quirks. He's the best part of me, and I'm very, very grateful and lucky that we found each other when we did.
So how do you feel about
Stacey,
this perfect society that we're supposedly living in?
We do not live in a perfect society. We don't. There's nothing called a perfect society. Not on this planet. Maybe in the Perseids somewhere there's a perfect society where there's no judgment, where there's unconditional love. We can't do this we can't do this without one another. We need help from our friends. We need help from family. We need help from our village. And I could not have written this book, Empty Cupboards, without the help from my friends and my sisters of a different mother and my husband and my kids, and from all the people who have crossed my path over the years, who loved me, hated me, rejected me, thought I was, the worst person in the world, and those who thought I'm the best person in the world. And that's what these stories are made up of, because we are all a part of who we have come across in our lives and the situations we've been in our lives. That's how we become the people we are today. And I just hope that, my hope is that there is more kindness in this world, because there's so much unkindness. And unless we step in each other's shoes, we really don't know what's going on in here. And I've always said, be careful of the 6 inches between your ears, because that's what's going to get us in trouble the most. We have to be kind to ourselves.
So having said that, Stacey, and I mean, might be very obvious to you, and yet, and it really took you reaching out to others. Why do you believe in people? We ask our guests this every week. Why do you believe in people?
Because I have hope that there's kindness. I have seen a young man open a door for an older woman who was carrying a whole bunch of packages. I have seen the beauty in humanity, and I know it's there. And I know that when we're born, we are not born racists. We are not born angry. We are not born with negativity. That's learned behavior. And I have hope that people will know that realize that we all need each other to keep this planet going, to keep ourselves going, and to reach out and to do whatever it is we need to do to protect what is truly ingrained in our humanity, which is love and love.
Thanks for sharing your hope with us today.
Thank you so much,
Stacey.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Amy, isn't it interesting that someone who basically gave up hope and almost gave up on her whole life has managed to turn it around, find hope, and now share that hope with people as she marries them, very people who are beginning new lives filled with hope together.
Exactly. And Kevin, to that point, I mean, the fact that she reached out to one other human being to get help, one other human being changed her life around. And that's what's so remarkable. So if you're struggling, and which we all are, reach out and speak to somebody that is going to be supportive and lends an ear to help you. If you've liked or have been inspired by this episode, please, we encourage you to subscribe to Believe in People, because we sure do. Thank you.
Thank you.